Hello and welcome back to the Kofi and Ren podcast. This is episode 9. I'm Kofi.
I'm Ren.
And today we're going to be talking about International Women's Day. But before we do that, I first want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, those being the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respect to the elders past, present and emerging. And of course, we always have to land on the fact that sovereignty was never ceded and this will always be indigenous land. But without further ado, International Women's Day. What's the angle we're hitting? How we're approaching this?
Yeah.
We actually know how we're approaching it. We're just asking for the conversation. So,
Yeah. I think. Well, first of all, apology to the viewers for being on a kind of 2-week hiatus. We did record a podcast like a week ago, and it's in the private YouTube algorithms, and we'll release it. But just a part of the ending didn't got cut out, but that's coming soon, and the YouTube viewers will get some premium content. Premium content. That's just, we're bringing the sauce here.
Exactly. I like it. Premium platinum.
Yeah, but I think the way I wanted to start this off was just like speaking about International Women's Day, because like as growing up, honestly, it was never a thing for me personally. Like, I came like South Africa, New Zealand. I think it was a big thing in South Africa, but I wasn't alive long enough at the time to care about international days. Like I was in a primary school kid when I was in South Africa. I wasn't like, a young adult, but I think they had like lots of obviously marches and things like that in the country. But in New Zealand, growing up, like IWD on International Women's Day, like I never really heard about it, and honestly, it was just like until I came here recently, like 3 years ago, which sounds crazy. I know I'm outing myself as someone that just doesn't care about women, but that's not the case. I just genuinely. Like until like I was out somewhere with someone and then like I saw it, I was like, what the heck is that? Like, when has that ever been a thing? And I think just by saying that, I kind of came across like I was being like, I don't know, disrespectful to the day itself. But genuinely for me, I had no clue that International Women's Day is a thing. And I think it's kind of cool like how we were just here in the city and we just saw people like a bunch of people walking past speaking about sexism, and I saw a cool thing that people did in Melbourne for like the pay gap and pay equality. I think I forgot what the cause was, but it was like some cupcake thing, and it was the idea of it was just like they're tired of companies on International Women's Day just throwing like cupcake parties and little things for like the woman, but like where's the pay equality? Like,
what's a cupcake gonna do for my wages?
Yeah.
That actually is like that's like funny that's what they think. Like, oh yeah, a cupcake party that'll resolve it.
Because a lot of companies, they have like inclusion and diversity teams in their like department, and they build these like companies just want to be like the best, so they'll do all this like things. They'll throw pizza parties, and when the people have been working overtime for like 3 weeks, but we're great. Look, we have a ping pong table in the like. But so the catchphrase was like, "Don't sugarcoat the wage equality," and I just thought that was so sick. Yeah. I think like not knowing about it, but now like as it's becoming more of a thing, I think it's cool just to celebrate women and like. Just outline things in our society, the patriarchy as the buzzword always. But there's some truth to that, and outline the things that are serious in our world at the moment, and the inequality that women go through, and just appreciate women in general. So I think it's a cool day.
Definitely. It's one of those things where it's like sometimes I think the same, similar to like Mother's Day or Father's Day or whatever day, where it's like. There's a day and it's like people kind of do their posts and everything like that, and then it seems like some people, you can get kind of cynical about it and be like, oh wow, like don't just post about it, do something, blah blah blah. But I think it's good that we have the day, so where it's like at the very least there's recognition. Obviously more than that needs to happen, but it's like I think that for the uninitiated, I think it's a day that starts conversation. You know what I mean? It's really good. It's good to pay attention to, and I think that it's something that's grown in relevancy for me just as the years have gone on. I don't remember exactly when I first became aware of it, but I know that I probably wasn't that aware of it in early high school, and it probably would have only been like kind of the last few years in which I've kind of started paying attention and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think, well, I was looking on Wikipedia as you were talking. It actually goes back. It's actually like quite old. Like the first recognized day was National Women's Day, and this was held on February 28th, 1909 in New York by like a party at the time. In terms of like the modern iteration of it, I'm not reading all that. Point is, point is, it's been going for a while.
Wait. Why are you saying women don't deserve your undevoted attention and they don't deserve your effort to find the knowledge?
That's crazy. Well,
wow.
By the 21st century, International Women's Day had been criticized as heavily diluted and commercialized. This is adoption by. Well, I'm reading a section of it on the Wikipedia. Let's see.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to see when Women's Day, as we know it now, started. And it seems like the United Nations started celebrating International Women's Day in 1975. So,
yeah, it's been a long time. It's been a long time.
Yeah. But so it's been here for a while. But I think it's only recently the relevancy's gone up, and I think that I don't know. I appreciate it because even in days where like maybe like I put out a post or something like that, like in past years, like even as soon as last year or years before, I don't remember when I started kind of properly paying attention, but I think it's just a good prompt to just pause and think for a moment, like hold on, because I think for a lot of people who aren't necessarily, they're not paying attention or they're not engaged in, the whole kind of fight for women's right and women's equality and all that kind of thing. The ones who aren't engaged in it but aren't necessarily against it, they're just not paying attention. It's again like a sign for them to pay attention, And for the person that is open to learning more and okay, actually, what's going on here, it's a really good thing. And I think that that's something that has been somewhat of an experience for me. I think it's been aided by the fact that I've always had really good women in my life, like kind of consistently, from like my family to my friends, kind of been a consistent thing. But the day is just kind of a moment to be like, oh, actually, hold on. The day for me, because generally what happens is on Women's Day in the past, right? I see a lot of posts, maybe sure I put out a post myself, whatever. And then I'm suddenly I suddenly become aware of how little I've been thinking about it in the lead up to it, or in my day to day. And that's what I like about it, because then that makes me be like, okay, well, if I'm actually serious about this, what does it look like for me to actually, pursue this and actually understand what women go through and understand the systems that are in place that harm women, and understand how deep and how deeply rooted some of these things are. Because at the time of filming this, I put out a post on my Instagram, and this is something that I've learned from just kind of various videos and books and all that kind of stuff. But basically, we all have internalized misogynism, the same way we have internalized racism and all that kind of stuff. Because the society that built it, I'm not trying to sound like I'm quoting that TikTok, but it's like it's to reference white supremacy, patriarchy. I know kind of buzzwords, whatever, but it's true. Like, that's what built it. Like the society was built by a racist and sexist society, and so we're all born in that. So we can't just be, I don't do that. But you actually have to consciously be unworking and unraveling these things rather than just I don't do that.
I think a good example of that is like, especially for like us being like African, Caribbean, people, like being black, sometimes you can like walk into a room, and when you're the only black person in the room, like even if everyone else on the whole table doesn't feel that they're for you, that might be like a bit of a, I don't know, like it's that for you there might be a bit of a tension, like I don't really know what I'm walking into here. I still have, you kind of like, there's still like a slight guard you feel.
Yeah.
And like sometimes, when we out in the countryside of Victoria and it's just all, Aussie blokes, and you're the one, feel like you're the one black person in the whole town, you feel a bit of that weight where, maybe those people, they're lovely people, but now you've been built since a child that, you know,
You have to be kind of
racism
wary in
exists
these
and you have to be aware.
spaces. Yeah.
And they don't know that you're processing all those things.
Yeah.
So the same can be said for like women. If you know, if there's the only lady on your team, and she's comes into the meeting room, like as a dude, don't speak over her, because you know that might be a time where she'll feel like her voice is not heard. Make her feel welcome in the room. So
yeah, no, that's actually an excellent point. Like it's in the society we're in the way we're kind of wired and raised. We need to be thinking. Not thinking for women, because that's just the same as talking over them, speaking of them.
Thinking about, like, being aware
and actually, like, you know, and making room for that and thinking ahead of that. So, like you're saying, yeah, if you know we're two guys, maybe there are two other guys in here, then one woman comes in. It's like we need to make sure that we're giving room, and that's like physical as well as vocally. Like we need to make sure we're not speaking over her. We need to make sure that. Like, you know, checking in, like, hey, are you good? Even things as simple as like giving space and just being conscious of your space, you know, making sure you feel comfortable here, kind of making sure like it's fully comfortable, because as a woman in this world, you've got about 5 different things to be fearful of when you go into a room than you do as a man. And I think one thing that you mentioned, you kind of said the whole like African Caribbean thing. I think this is speaking like kind of from our black experience. I think that it's something that, as I think sometimes black men in particular can be kind of antagonistic. Not in like, I'm not trying to generalize, but culturally speaking, sometimes we can be a bit antagonistic towards things like, you know, equality and women's rights and all that kind of thing, and that comes from a cultural place. Both, I think a lot of it cultural trauma. I think both cultural in terms of like where our cultures come from, but also cultural trauma. And what I mean by that is, well, the cultural trauma aspect is the fact that obviously a lot of us, whether we're descendants of slaves or not, we've had culture forced on us by colonialism, right? So like whatever our indigenous culture was kind of washed away with slavery or with that country being colonized. And so now we've had generations of being raised under this way of doing things when that wasn't even necessarily the way our ancestors did it originally. But then on a cultural level, which I guess kind of stems from this, you know, a lot of, you know, large chunks of Africa are Christian, Muslim, and these are cultures that are patriarchal, at least in the way they're practiced in modern days. I know that's, you know, I'm not speaking to ancient times. And basically, I guess I've kind of gone into a bit of a segue, but the point is, as black people, I think sometimes because we have a struggle, which is being black in the world, and being a black man comes with a whole bunch of struggles, you know, being seen as a threat, being fetishized, people thinking you're unsafe can result in you being, you know, getting fired from a job or getting killed or whatever, that kind of stuff. Sometimes because we've kind of got that experience and then those cultural things in the background, it then makes us be like, oh, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean women's rights? And then I think as well, there's another aspect as well, which I was actually, one thing I forgot to reference in the whole cultural trauma thing is that historically there's been a lot of emasculation. When you look at like, you know, slavery, for example, it's like a lot of black slaves being used however they want by the slaver's wife, or sodomized by the slaver, or made to do things to each other, whether violence or sexual stuff, whatever, to each other for that, you know, for white people's entertainment. And that trauma, I think, there are studies on this. It's kind of leaked into the way we relate to each other in certain things, which is why obviously like historically hip hop has been very misogynistic, because it's like in this world, if in like a power scale, it's like, well, the only thing we kind of have power over are black women normally. And so obviously now what I've described is like the worst case scenario, right? I don't think you and I are like that, but I think that is unfortunately the foundation in which a lot of us are born to, even in subconscious ways, you know? And that comes into some of the language you hear, like, oh yeah, you know, I was talking to this bee and all this kind of stuff, and blah, blah. And it becomes, women become a bargaining chip, or a point for masculinity or how man you are rather than an actual person. I think that this point, where was this point coming from? I got really lost in it. I think that, I guess generally just talking in terms of where this stuff comes from. I mean, that's why, coming back to Women's Day, that's why like days where we kind of like pause and think, I guess that basically, I forgot where I was coming from with that point, but I guess I'll land on, we really need to be conscious and be honest and sit down about why we do what we do and where that comes from. Because every behavior we do has an origin somewhere.
Yeah. And I guess also on that, today is just a day to also maybe speak and hear from women about the experiences that they have, because a lot of things that, as dudes, we sometimes might not be aware of, and might not be like a serious thing, or just having a conversation, then you can be like, oh, okay, I've never actually thought about that. I've never actually, realized that me saying this or me acting in this way could, so you can be blind in this world and not realize that the actions that you do cause an effect. Like, don't stare at someone on a train, don't stand too close to someone. Like, there's just basic things.
Just being conscious, conscious and being open to learning and wanting to learn, and keeping your ego in line when you're learning as well. I think that because obviously, again, patriarchal society, we kind of have the power. It makes it so that when we're challenged on things, and I'm talking in a broad sense, it makes us hypersensitive. Like, you kind of get those, you get those guys, like, what do you mean? Like, the one, basically the same ones, in the same way some people are like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean? You're saying I'm racist? Well, you're saying this, blah, blah, blah. Like the defensiveness.
Yeah.
There's a big defensiveness. I think you have to have your defenses down and kind of realize and listen and be like, well, hold on, like, where's this? Because this is coming from, for those who are skeptical, understand this isn't just coming from nowhere. So why don't you pause and listen rather than just kind of say like, oh, that's rubbish.
Yeah, but what do you do if you're someone and you have someone in your life who's like that? Because I was listening to something today, and it was talking about it was like on relationships, right? But it was saying like, criticizing someone is never gonna be a point where that's gonna make the like action that they're doing change. Because when you criticize someone, you're criticizing who they are as a person and not the actual root cause. So I'm not saying this to like defend these people who are thinking like that, but sometimes, when people are just walking around with their guards up, but this is someone you care about, like, it's going to be not like, I think that sometimes that is also sometimes conversations like we have to have, because like a lot of people are in like not abusive but like bad like relationships or with bad people in their life, and like on a day like this it can be like, hey, like, you need to care about the, like, I don't want to speak for women, but obviously like there'll be women maybe listening who are like, my dude's a bit of a dickhead. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that there's no like one rule, and it obviously depends on the situation. But I feel like if there's someone in your life that you care about that is kind of belligerent and kind of guarded against these things, well, I think that you have to kind of look at like your relational currency with the person. Like, are they someone that you can talk to about, like, because if you can't call them out about leaving the toilet seat up or washing the dishes, then you can't call them out on their internalized misogyny. It's not going to work. So I'm not saying don't bother, but it's like that's you got to work out some other things in the thing. But also, like, I think there's a way you can call out behaviors without coming for the person.
Yeah.
Like, if you say make a joke or whatever that offends me, and I'm just like, what the F dickhead or something like that, that's not conducive to understanding. But if like either in the moment or maybe later on, I'm like, hey bro, like, like, I love our relationship, I love you, but what you said made me feel like this and kind of this, you're probably going to be more inclined to listen, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's just a matter of approaching them as a person. I think that's a very good point you bring up, because I think that in a lot of the discourse around feminism, or rather intersectional, very important. In the conversation of intersectional feminism, and the kind of discourse behind that, you see a lot of dogfights and arguments and this person saying this outrageous thing, and this person getting called out. But in the day to day, you know, and obviously when you see voices like that, you're kind of normally hearing the worst, like the Andrew Tates or whatever, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, well, and that should be called out harshly, you know, and taken down.
Because honestly, the dudes who like yell out, "I hate feminism," this, that, and the third, they hate the TikTok people that they see on TikTok, like the outlandish, crazy people. But if you actually sit down and like ask what like you actually think, 9 times out of 10, like if you actually see them for the person, like they're not.
Well, you know? I get what you're saying. I say it's more like the everyday person who, because if we're talking about like the big figureheads,
yeah,
those guys aren't the ones we're talking about. They're the loud minority of people who are actually not great. Because if at that point you're getting on a platform, you've definitely had the room and space to know better.
Yeah.
And opportunity to know. But I think what you're talking about is the everyday person who thinks that they hates feminism when they really just don't like the buzzwords and they don't like this and that. And for those people, if you were in relationship with those people, it's a matter of saying, well, hold on, like that's making them aware of that. No, wait. So do you actually disagree with women being paid equally? Do you actually know the facts behind this? And then they're like, oh, actually, I didn't realize. And then making them separate what they've seen from what actually is. Yeah. I think that's a big part of educating. But also, what I was originally going to say was that I think we're going back to the thing. It's like, yeah, it's just remembering the humanity of who you're talking to, not coddling, and not being, oh, no, it's okay, but just being, I think also being comfortable with being the only one in the room as well. Actually, that's another aspect that we don't really, that's one of the hardest aspects, that kind of peer pressure aspect, because I mean, like I think a big part of it is, I think a lot of it comes down to also just like really owning what you say. Because if you're saying that you're for women's rights and liberation, right, and then you go into a room and you kind of hear that talk, and then you say nothing, the next time you say it, it won't be with as much strength. Like people can feel when you're not the same person in the same space. Yeah, I think you have to be, and that's hard, but you have to be willing to actually nah, that's not really my kind of joke. You know what I mean? Or, oh, nah, actually, I don't think that's the right thing.
Yeah.
And eventually, and then people will either respect it. They'll either respect it, ignore it, or boot you out. But either way, that will inform you. It's kind of it's the whole thing that they say in like, Christian circles, right? Like you're going to do more if you're like Christ in your life or whatever, then you're going to do a lot more to convince people than if you go say, hey, go read the Bible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And same for kind of anything else. And I think that's what it really is like. And so just, I think
also, on the point of like, if you have someone in your life in the moment and they're a bit hard to like talk to about like certain things, like see their humanity. And you're right about not cuddling, because like sometimes like a strong rebuke is necessary. Like that was not cool, like what you said there. And because honesty should never, we always have this conversation, like, honesty should never be like blunt or rude or disrespectful. Honesty should just be how it is. And if it's the other person's job, it's on them. It's not on 100%. You. If you spoke up about it, it's not on how they reacted. That shows more on their character than it does on you. But also, I was just gonna say, my mind got lost now. Oh my gosh. I can't believe I just went fully blank.
You were talking about how the truth, like not going for feelings, but the truth is just what it is. People.
Yeah. And honestly, that's pretty much my main thing. Like, if you're gonna say something, like it's just speak about it and be honest about it. And it's not the person. It's not on you how the person reacts to that. And then. What's hard is in those situations, you just have to like value, okay, like if you were very sincere and like open and honest and came with like, hey, that hurt me, and that person doesn't change, then you have to start reevaluating that relationship that you have in your life. Because 100%. Like Yeah, if you're just being completely honest and open with someone, and then it's going nowhere, like
then you know what you need to know.
and you're not just saying you're a misogynist, you're this, that, and the third, you're a prick, like, but you came to them as a human being and saying like the things that you did made me feel small in this room. Like, come on, like,
Yeah,
that's
if they don't shape up to that, then you know what you need to know.
yeah.
Yeah. I think we're probably gonna call it there. But there's a lot more that can be said about this. There's a lot more that will be said about this in future episodes. But I think I just wanted to point to a few voices and kind of women that you can listen to on this. Well, some women. Well, actually, it's a mix of people. So this person's actually non-binary in this case, but they're one of the first ones that came to mind. Khadija Mbowe. That's Khadija and then Mbowe. They're a non-binary YouTuber, and they have a lot of really interesting and informational talks on these kind of things, and just break it down in a way that I think is really understandable. I've been on my bell hooks recently. I've been reading all about love by bell hooks, but you can find her speeches, you can find the audiobook on YouTube, you can find breakdowns on her. Just look up bell hooks and there's a lot of information. Bell hooks is one of the kind of crown voices of intersectional feminism. And the reason why I say intersectional feminism is because feminism, I don't know, you kind of have to look into the history basically, but feminism essentially is like, it's kind of got a bit of a colonial side to it. Intersectional feminism that's the one we want to go for. This person is not non-binary or female, but they are super informational, and I think that really great if you're kind of I think it's important to kind of have men that are speaking on this as well. There's this YouTuber called FD Signifier, which I've sent you some of his videos before, but you need to watch some of these guys. It's fire. This is a black guy from the States, and it's the way he breaks it down. This guy's like a cis straight guy, but the way he's really studied and unpacked these things and is able to break down the ways in which it doesn't just harm women, but it harms ourselves. Because at the end of the day, any kind of system of prejudice always has a backhanded effect. So FD Signifier, that's FD and then Signifier, pretty much spelled the way it is. And then the last one I'm going to say is, what's his name again? Hold on. His name is... I was literally watching his videos today, and then I've forgotten the name. Foreign Man in a Foreign Land. He's a Caribbean YouTuber. And what's great about him is that this is a very, cis straight guy, very muscular guy. But again, he just kind of talks about these issues in a very fun and informative way, but very, very goes in depth. And yeah, these are some voices that you should really tap into. We'll have the links to them in the description. Happy Women's Day.
Show the women in your life some love. Show them some appreciation. Send them a nice message. If you haven't already, just I missed it. But all love to you.
One more thing before we conclude as well. I just want to call this out. For the ones that say, I couldn't be friends. Or normally the phrase, I couldn't be friends with a female. Rubbish. That's very random, but I just had to call that out. That whole belief that you can't be friends with women, you can only kind of date them, which is really, really common.
Okay.
Nuts. But maybe we can go into that in another episode. But for now, we'll see you soon. Like, subscribe, follow Kofi and Ren, and we'll catch you next time.
Peace.